World alert. What you're about to see was not a simple attack. It was an operation that left Russia and China utterly humiliated. Subscribe if you believe Ukraine did the right thing by destroying the Chinese convoy before those weapons reached the front. Comment if you think they crossed a dangerous line by directly attacking Beijing's military equipment. What happened that dawn in the forests of Belgorod wasn't luck. It was a meticulously planned strategy using intelligence, AI, and homemade drones. Stay until the end, because this operation redefined what modern warfare truly means. At 4:13 a.m., in the Belgorod forest, Russia, a Russian Tor M2 air defense system came to life, howling as it launched a 9M338 missile into the pre-dawn sky. A mile away, it found its target, a tiny Ukrainian reconnaissance drone, no bigger than a sparrow, vaporized in a flash of light. On the ground, the Chinese soldiers escorting a military truck convoy erupted in cheers. They believed they had just neutralized the only threat for miles. They had no idea that, with its dying breath, that drone had transmitted a data packet confirming the exact location of all 15 trucks. While the Chinese celebrated as if they just won the World Cup, operators in Kyiv were watching the live feed, not celebrating but laughing. This operation began in space, with American commercial satellites from Maxar Technologies, which detected the first tangible evidence of a secret arms deal. A shipment of Chinese PLZ-05 artillery, bought and paid for by Moscow, being unloaded at the port of Vladivostok. Then came the ghosts, tiny 5-pound switchblade drones flying at 10,000 feet, tracking the convoy's route through the Belgorod forest. Their encrypted data streamed flawlessly through Starlink. Finally, Ukrainian AI got to work, analyzing the convoy's radio frequencies, identifying the command vehicle, and even predicting where the drivers would stop for coffee. The stakes couldn't have been higher. This convoy carried the first delivery of a multi-billion-dollar deal with Beijing, the very hardware Russia was counting on to smash through Ukrainian defenses and turn the tide of the front. If Ukraine failed, a city would fall. How do you defeat a rolling fortress guarded by elite troops and an advanced air defense system? Ukraine did it with a plan forged not from military doctrine, but from sheer, unbreakable determination to reclaim every inch of its land. At 4:15 a.m., inside a modified M113 hidden 5 miles from the convoy, the operator's hands were steady. He flipped a single switch and unleashed hell. One by one, 25 FPV drones rose into the night, each armed with a 2-pound shaped charge warhead, 205. But they didn't fly in straight lines. They didn't fly in formation. They scattered, executing a radical strategy known as the ghost swarm. Their flight paths were intentionally chaotic, mimicking the erratic flutter of a flock of birds. This was pure psychological warfare, aimed not at soldiers, but at a computer. The Tor M2, a multi-million-dollar system designed to hunt jets and missiles moving at predictable speeds, was utterly baffled by a cloud of butterflies on Russian radar screens. The attack didn't even register as a threat, dismissed as natural interference. For a moment, the plan was working perfectly. 2:44. The drones were ghosts. And then, the operator's screen burst into static. He recognized that signature, a Russian Orlan 10 drone. It wasn't just observing, it was jamming. Suddenly, he was no longer the hunter. He was the hunted. And if that Orlan located his swarm, the entire mission would end in a fireball in exactly 10 seconds. 4:16 a.m. The Orlan 10 operator wasn't an algorithm. He was a professional, and his instincts screamed that something was wrong. The signals moved like birds, but too coordinated, too deliberate. Ignoring his onboard AI, he called the Spetsnaz escort commander on the ground. The Russian response was immediate and brutally efficient. They didn't waste time with bullets. A Spetsnaz team deployed an LPD-801 anti-drone rifle, a weapon that kills with invisible waves of energy. A focused, silent beam sliced through the night. 2 miles away, 3 Ukrainian FPV drones suddenly dropped from the sky like stones, their propellers frozen, their video feeds cutting to static. Inside the M113, the operator felt a punch in his gut as 3 of his screens went dark. "We lost 3!" he shouted, adrenaline tightening his voice. "They're hunting us!" The illusion of the ghost swarm shattered instantly. The convoy commander didn't hesitate. He issued 2 orders over the radio. First, move now! The massive trucks loaded with Chinese artillery roared to life, accelerating desperately through the dark forest at 40 miles per hour. His second order launched 2 more Orlan 10s into the sky, their cameras forming a wider and more aggressive search grid. The entire dynamic of the battle changed. The element of surprise was gone. The drones were no longer ghosts. At 4:17 a.m. inside the M113, the Ukrainian operator didn't waste a second trying to outsmart the Orlans. He knew he couldn't win a game of hide-and-seek, so he changed the rules entirely. He activated the echo trap. This wasn't just standard jamming, it was far more insidious. It completely disoriented the Orlan's navigation system, convincing it that the Ukrainian FPV swarm was miles from its real position. The Russian eyes in the sky were now blind and confused, but that was only the distraction. Now came the termination phase. With the lead Orlan completely misled, the M113 operator initiated the second stage of the counterattack. A side panel slid open, and a Switchblade 600 loitering munition launched silently into the air. A 50-pound Predator, it climbed to 15,000 feet, locking onto the Orlan's heat signature using its powerful FIR thermal optics. For 30 seconds, the Orlan circled aimlessly, completely unaware that death was falling from the stratosphere. The impact was devastating. A 10-pound warhead turned Russia's main reconnaissance asset into a cloud of shrapnel. A brilliant tactical victory for the Ukrainians. But on the ground, the Spetsnaz could only watch their eye in the sky get obliterated. At 4:18 a.m., the Spetsnaz commander was effectively blind and furious. He had just watched his aerial support vaporized by an enemy he couldn't even see. He didn't respond by launching another fragile drone. He called in a monster. From a nearby airbase, a Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopter took off. This wasn't reconnaissance. It was a 12-ton flying tank hunter, armed with Vickers missiles capable of killing from 7 miles away. Its mission was simple: find the source of the attack and erase it from existence. The Alligator didn't need to search long. Its powerful thermal optics cut through the forest canopy, hunting for one thing: the heat of the M113's engine. From 5 miles out, the pilot achieved a lock. On his screen, the rectangular thermal signature of the M113 glowed like a bonfire. Inside, the Ukrainian operator was still savoring his victory against the Orlan, until his world was consumed by a piercing electronic scream. A red icon flashed violently on his warning display. It wasn't a radar lock. It was a laser-guided missile lock, far deadlier, far more immediate. The text beneath the icon was a death sentence written in calm digital letters. Vickers missile lock, impact in 20 seconds. His heart pounded in his chest. The simple act of launching the Switchblade to save his swarm had now signed his own death warrant. The heat of his vehicle had betrayed him. There was nowhere to run, no place to hide. He was a sitting duck, and an anti-tank missile was coming straight at him at over 130 miles per hour. At 4:19 a.m., the operator's hands flew across the console. He didn't try to flee. He prepared to counterattack. A canister shot out from the roof, not with a roar, but with a sharp hiss. The projectile climbed 500 feet and burst, not into flames, but into a glowing cloud, the smoke phantom. This thermal decoy produced a massive heat signature, far hotter than the M113's engine. To the Vickers missile, that cloud was irresistible. Within seconds, it diverted course and plunged straight into the fake target. A blinding explosion lit up the forest, but the M113 remained intact. On the Ka-52's monitors, a blip appeared, a drone, barely visible, dismissed as a glitch. The pilot ignored it until it was too late. The drone detonated just meters away, releasing an electromagnetic pulse that killed everything in range. The screens filled with error codes, then total black. Weapons, navigation, systems, all dead. The billion-ruble attack helicopter became a lifeless block of metal falling from the sky, defeated by a homemade drone and the cunning of a Ukrainian operator. The mighty war machine had been neutralized by ingenuity. With no options left, the Russian pilot limped his damaged Ka-52 back to base. The deadliest threat was gone. The sky was clear. At 4:21 a.m., inside the M113, the Ukrainian operator watched the remaining 22 drones ready for the final strike. He took a deep breath and pressed the final command. Within seconds, the swarm descended like a storm of steel. The drones, programmed to hit the weakest points, dived onto the Russian truck's fuel tanks. The first impact was a blinding white flash, followed by an explosion that ignited hundreds of gallons of diesel. The shaped charges, with millisecond delay fuses, pierced through steel and unleashed jets of molten metal, triggering a chain reaction. Each truck became the tomb of the next. In under 3 minutes, 15 PLZ-05 howitzers, 20 military vehicles, and over 40 Russian and Chinese troops were annihilated. Hours later, a Maxar satellite confirmed the aftermath. A Russian forest turned into a crater field. The command network in Belgorod collapsed, and for 72 hours, Russia lost communication across the entire front. Without its new Chinese artillery, its advantage in Kharkiv vanished. A single precision strike had ignited chaos, turning Russia's so-called super weapon into burning scrap, and thus ended one of the most astonishing operations of the modern war. A multi-million-dollar convoy reduced to ashes by drones costing less than a motorcycle. But here lies the question dividing the world. Was it an act of self-defense or a provocation that could spark a much greater conflict? Subscribe if you believe Ukraine simply outsmarted its enemy and proved that intelligence can defeat brute force. Comment if you think by attacking a Chinese shipment, Kyiv crossed a dangerous line that could alter the global balance. Because in this war, every missile, every drone, and every decision can change the course of history.